All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Tuesday, September 17th, and coming off of a great win over UTSA, a bittersweet moment for us on the podcast. We got to do our show together, and we were a little concerned with Quinn Ewers to kind of go into the weekend, if you will. However, news seems to be not that bad. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into a lot of other things. Sark had a great press conference post-game talking about getting to watch his son play. Freshman standouts like Colin Simmons and Ryan Wingo. We're going to get into all of the comments that he talked about there as well. We've got a great show for everybody. This is All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson. And Jake, the Texas Longhorns are number one in the country for the first time since 2008. Does that mean anything to you?
I mean, it means something, as far as what we've kind of talked about all along as we've started this show, is just from where they've come from. When Sark took over, they started 5-7. They lost to KU at home. A lot of people were down thinking maybe Sark wasn't the guy. I think you and I and a lot of Longhorn faithful stood kind of true with him and believed in him. But for him to have them number one first year in the SEC week 3 is a dream that I don't think any of us could have saw coming a few years ago when Sarkisian was year 1. And like Michael Taft said, it doesn't really mean much at the end of the day, and it only matters what they end the year. And if they end the year number 1, that's the only way that they become a legendary team. And he is exactly right in that. But as a fan, it's okay to kind of relish in the moment being number 1 and now being the hunted and not the hunter like Texas was last year.
Yeah, I made a tweet and I stand by it full-hearted. And I know this is more so player coach mentality. But being number 1 in the country going into week 4 means nothing. You can lose it in an instant, and it absolutely can just be a blemish on the radar in the college football world. Winning the SEC championship, getting to the playoffs, and winning getting to the national championship game, bringing home a trophy, and ending the year number 1 is this team's goal. Don't get it twisted. They're not satisfied, or this isn't the end goal for them, is to just reach being the number 1 team in the country by week 4. I know that's coach talk. I know that's not really my job to really feel that way. Like you said, as a fan, it is just take a moment and just kind of enjoy being the best team in the country. We haven't seen that number 1 next to the Texas Longhorns on the rankings since 2008, folks. That was the Colt McCoy season and Jordan Shipley season. That was a long time ago. And so, yeah, it's cool to see it and to have it happen. Again, that's not the end goal. That's not where this team, wants to finish the season, or they want to finish the season there, but that's not their goal in week 4, going into the offseason being like, you know what? Hey, we were number 1 in the country for, a couple of weeks. And then, things fell apart there. So, but yeah, it's cool for a fan, but does it mean that much to the team right now? I don't know. What do you think?
First off, I think I wish the playoff system was around in 2008, because I still think that Longhorn team was just about the best in the nation if it wasn't for an incredible win, by Texas Tech and Lubbock and Crabtree. But I would wish that playoff system was around in 2008. But
because you and I, we've gone back and played the what if game on that season with that 3-way tie between Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech in the Big 12, and that it just happened to not fall our way.
Which it should have fell Texas' way, because Texas beat OU on a neutral field. OU beat Tech in Norman, and Tech beat Texas in Tech. The way common sense would tell you Texas should have won it, but I digress. Don't want to get too off the rails this early. I just thinking about that 2008 team, and that was probably better than the 2010 team that actually went to the title game. And so I always think about that team, and
there goes our 30 minutes. And but no, I'm with you. It is. I have a fond memory of that Tech game, actually, we as a family went to a bowling alley. And my dad at the time, may or may not, can neither confirm nor deny, had a few too many adult beverages while we were at the bowling alley watching that Texas Tech game. When Crabtree made that catch, or no, it was actually the Gideon play. It was the Gideon dropped interception that happened just a few moments prior to the Crabtree catch. My dad starts yelling at the TV, and he starts making this big scene. Managers have to come over, calm everybody down, and just like, hey, guys, it's okay, chill. As they're telling him to calm down, Crabtree makes the catch, doesn't go out of bounds, goes into the end zone, scores, wins it. And my dad is just F-bombing and middle fingering and all the things, and he's ready to fight somebody. We get kicked out of a family bowling alley, as an entire family are out of there. And I mean, it was what, 2008, so I had to have been 14 at the time, 13, 14 at the time, something along those lines maybe. But anyway, yeah, so that was my memory of that day. Not only did Texas's national championship hopes go down the toilet, I got kicked out of a bowling alley because of my dad at the time. So it's always funny.
I've never heard that story.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
It's funny to go back and think about that. But yeah.
But yeah, no, being number one for Texas, I'm enjoying it as a fan, but honestly, I was a little surprised they jumped to number one. I expected Georgia to just stay number one until proven otherwise by actually losing a game and not just having a close game that wasn't expected. But I think Texas seems to be embracing it the correct way based off all the stuff we saw from players talking to the press today and the coaches talking to the press. So it's an exciting moment for the fans, but I don't think inside of the building they're taking too much care into it. Really, Jake Majors actually had a funny comment saying when he learned they were number one, he was on the couch watching the Cowboys get their ass beat. So
That's a great. It's actually a great pick me up. It really was, because he was probably in the same situation we were. We were probably all pissed off at the Cowboys of ruining our Sunday, and then we get the news that Texas is number one, and you're like, you know what? Hey, this weekend's not too bad. You know, this kind of turn our hopes around a little bit. Hey, let's go ahead, switch gears a little bit. News on the Quinn Ewers injury, the abdominal strain, not as serious as initially thought of during the time of the injury at the game, and has been officially ruled as week to week. Do we know anything more than that?
No, last update I saw was earlier today, and it was basically sounded pretty optimistic. He'll for sure be back for OU. I even saw that I did see one thing on an inside report that it was noted that basically they were likely going to keep him out of ULM just to be precautionary.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost sounds like if this was Georgia this week, he would possibly be playing. Thankfully, it's not Georgia, because I think it's with that type of injury, I feel like it's better to make sure he's as close to 100% as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if he's either on a pitch count against Mississippi State, because you're hoping to be up big in that game if he plays in it, or if even they just sit him out that week as well, just to give him then the bye week and all that extra time to be 100% ready to go come OU week.
You know, I think he actually, if he's able to go, if they're fully confident that he can play, he's going to play against Mississippi State. I believe he will not play this week against ULM. But I think if he's ready to go and they're confident that he is healthy and he's not going to re-injure anything, I think he goes against Mississippi State. It's the opening conference game of the SEC. I mean, I don't care if it's Mississippi State and they just got blown the doors off of Toledo. I think it's a pretty big moment for Texas, and I think that they want a full strength Texas team out there to put them away. Maybe he only plays a half. You know, maybe he goes into the third quarter and Texas is handedly, taking care of business there, and Arch can go in and finish the game off, and that's great. But I think to get some reps before going into the bye week, get some live action, maybe even get hit before the OU game might be good for him.
Yeah, I think they'll play him if he can play. I just think a pitch count was the wrong use of words. It'd be more of he's going to be on a short leash in the fact of as soon as Texas has that game up, 3 possessions even, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go ahead and get the pull, but it just all depends on how he's doing. Strains and things like that seem to all kind of heal differently. The fact that they're so optimistic this early tells me he's probably feeling quite a bit better, and not just that, oh, the scans look good. I'm guessing the verbal feedback from Quinn is, oh, he's probably feeling a lot better than he thought he was going to feel, because his body language suggested I imagined he felt like he was going to be out for a while from the pain when it
Right.
initially happened. And so he must be feeling quite a bit better for these reports to be coming out, I would think.
That and I'm sure the wave of relief and the stress that's off of his mind, and the rest of the team, I'm sure is a very uplifting, optimistic feeling in that locker room right now. Speaking of optimistic, the future of the Texas Longhorns, very optimistic future with Arch Manning playing the way he did, had 5 touchdowns. He does plan to start. Now, Jake, this is a different feel for Arch now that he's going into a game as a starter, preparing for an entire week with the ones, and he's going to get that starter treatment at least for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but at least for a week against ULM. Are we expecting maybe a more prepared, better looking, calm, under pressure Arch, or kind of what are our thoughts about him going in as the starter? One report that I really enjoyed reading was Sark was pleased with the mental fortitude that Arch came off the field, verbalized what happened on that sack deep in Longhorn territory in that UTSA game. I think on his had to have been his 3rd or 4th possession, because he scored on his first 2 possessions. That he came off, he was able to verbalize to Sark what happened, diagnose the play, see it, react to it after the fact. But Sark was really pleased with the maturity of him kind of recognizing his own mistake out on the field. With a week of prep, game film, things like that, him being the acting number 1, what's the potential that we see from Arch against ULM?
It's hard to say he's going to look much better than last week, because he was pretty damn good last week.
It's pretty awesome.
I mean, 9 of 12 with 4 touchdowns and 230 yards or whatever it was. I mean, that's more than OU's putting up in a game this year so far. So it's hard to say he's going to be that much better, but at the same time, I imagine with a week to prepare, he's a Manning. He has a high football IQ, not just because he's a Manning, but because we know this from him talking to the coaches. All the coaches rave about his football IQ, him having a week to prepare. I just imagine the progressions are probably going to come a little bit quicker, especially in that opening script, and kind of, they're going to have a set of plays that they plan to run throughout the game, even outside of that first script. So I think he's just going to be more prepared for the progressions, because it felt like what happened on that sack. I'd be interested to hear what Arch said to Sark, but at least part of it felt like he was just a touch slow on the progressions. And maybe it was something the defense did to throw him off. Maybe he just lost the internal clock for a second. But this is why this, as long as assuming Quinn, that, this might be a hot take, but assuming Quinn comes back and is fully healthy and everything's fine, this could end up being a positive thing for Texas in the long run of this program. Getting Arch this time, he didn't get many snaps as a true freshman because he ended up being able to redshirt. He's gotten some snaps this year, but most of them have come against UTSA. He didn't play against Michigan. He played limited against Colorado State. And even in the UTSA game, they had to pull him early because they were just up too much, and you couldn't afford the risk, even though you needed him to get snaps. So I think this time for him to prepare as a starter and get an idea what next year is going to look like for him, and hopefully the year after that and the year after that, then I think it's going to be really valuable for him in that sense. I don't know how much of a week to week change we're going to see, but I think next year we're going to see an even better version of Arch Manning than we would have if he wasn't getting this start.
Yeah, I agree. I like the way you put that, Jake. I completely agree that this week of prep and him playing in the UTSA game the way he did is only going to drive the stock for the Texas Longhorns in 2025 way up. Regardless of how this season ends, people are now excited. I mean, it's a media award at this point. I almost don't even value the Heisman as much as it once was valued, but he's now the seventh favorite, odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. That's not going to happen, and I think that was also before the news of Quinn's injury and the likelihood that Quinn was going to return as quickly as he is.
Let's get both of them to New York.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Let's do a dual quarterback and two Heisman. You know, that reminds me of that Ohio State team that had J.T. Barrett and Cardale Jones, and it was who was the other one? There was three.
It wasn't C.J. Stroud. That was way before C.J. Stroud.
Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, I think it was Terrell Pryor. We might be getting it wrong, but they had three QBs.
Ohio State's had an onslaught of quarterbacks in that time frame that they all kind of run together. But I do know it was J.T. Barrett. It was Cardale Jones. I want to say it was Braxton Miller.
Yep, you're right.
Braxton Miller. And they were all three in the Heisman running in like week 2. And I was like, what are we doing here, folks? And so, but yeah, Arch is 7th on the favorites of the Heisman list right now. We'll see how he does against ULM. I absolutely hate that, but is what it is. Hey, let's dive into some comments that Sark said in his press conference, whether it be post game or earlier on Monday. Steve Sarkisian raving about his freshmen, whether that be Colin Simmons or Ryan Wingo, who are putting invaluable minutes on a very good number 1 ranked Texas Longhorn team. True freshman playing high school football last year, contributing valuable minutes on this Texas team. Sark saying Ryan Wingo is one of the most explosive freshmen that he's ever seen. Freshmen that he has seen. I don't know. See if you've ever heard of these guys. Reggie Bush, Devontae Smith, and Xavier Worthy. In terms of the potential that we see in Ryan Wingo, is that Sark kind of just pumping up his own guy, or do you actually see Ryan Wingo possibly being on the level of a Reggie Bush, Devonta Smith, or Xavier Worthy?
I think Wingo might already be the best wide receiver on the team. It's just a matter of him maybe learning the whole playbook. Texas has a pretty complex offensive system to learn. That's typically what holds freshmen back from playing, especially at wide receiver. And I have a lot of respect for Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden. They've both been playing excellent. Jonte Cook has slept on. DeAndre Moore has been popping, and especially if that Michigan catch would have counted.
Yeah.
But Wingo, again, take what you want into looking at grades, but he's the highest graded Texas wide receiver. I think it was around a 93 through 3 games, which as a freshman is absurd. And it's not just his ability as a wide receiver running routes and catching the football. We saw the run play against Michigan. He has that level of speed and that level of acceleration, while also having size and the ability to make moves. He just, every time you see him on the field, he doesn't look like a true freshman. The reports from spring practice and obviously how he looked in the spring game were all that this guy's unbelievable, and I don't see how you keep him off the field. But sometimes those reports don't really transition into the regular season, especially when it's about a freshman.
Yeah.
But Ryan Wingo is as advertised. This dude's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft when it's all said and done, as long as he stays healthy. So, yeah, I think the hype's there. I think that what Sark said is true. I think he has a chance to be one of the best to ever suit up in the burnt orange.
And going on the other side of the football, another true freshman, Colin Simmons, leading the team in tackles for loss, pressures, and sacks. Comes out after that UTSA game, goes to Twitter and says, I got work to do. And his co-teammate over there on the other side, Malik Muhammad, the cornerback sophomore, quote tweets it and says, same. I think that goes to kind of what you and I were saying in our Saturday's episode of our immediate reaction of saying, I don't think this team as a whole enjoyed the way they played against UTSA. I think there was a lot of things to go back to the film room and take away from it in terms of room for improvement. And I think we got a little glimpse of that in these comments from Colin Simmons and Malik Muhammad.
Yeah, and they're pretty commonly saying stuff like that on social media, but it does just go to show the culture within that locker room. It is about getting better every single week. And even when it doesn't, I'd say Saturday's game against UTSA was not their best game. I'd say several players had some weaker performances on both sides of the ball, but Colin Simmons and Malik Muhammad were not two of those guys. They were
No.
both incredible
Yeah.
for all 4 quarters when they were on the field. And the fact that that's their mindset week in and week out, it's still such a breath of fresh air, even though this is kind of year 2 into seeing the program be a top contending level football team. It's still just such a breath of fresh air to me to see after just years of complacent players, complacent coaches, and just, 8-win season seemed like the best we could get for a long time, and pray for a one random 10-win season where you beat a Georgia team sitting half their players. It's just such a dramatic opposite end that we're seeing now compared to that just 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and you're right. It feels so good to know that these players hold themselves to a higher standard. And I know it's coach speak, but their standard is their standard, and they absolutely live and breathe by it. They hold themselves accountable. It's not only holding the team and their teammates accountable, they hold themselves accountable. They're looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, look, I've got to do better here. Look, I got work to do here. I'm listening to my coaches. I'm making eye contact in the film room whenever they're, when they're going at me because I made a mistake or I didn't hustle enough on this play or the effort wasn't there. I'm acknowledging that. And I'm saying, look, I'm going to go fix this. This isn't something that we know. I think they recognize they have something very special. They have a very rare opportunity here. And they know where Texas has been and they know where they're going to take this program. And I think something I love about this class, and whether it be, Quinn Ewers' class, whatever regime it is that's kind of pushing this envelope, this culture shift, is they're embracing the fact that they're the ones that are going to bring Texas back with Sark. Like they're the one. This is the first initial class of something that could be something very, very special for a very long time in college football. Because you and I, we were talking about the recruiting class in Texas, and it's like, does it seem like this 2025 class coming up might have better talent than the one that just came in? Like, it's just a constant reload. It's a constant reload. And this class here, these upperclassmen, these leaders, the Kelvin Bankses, the Quinn Ewerses, those types of guys are leading the charge. And I think they realize they have something very, very special here.
And I think the guys who were on last year's team have a sour taste left in their mouth. Yeah. I think they expected to win that Washington game. And I think they were upset with how they started the game, especially. And then, with the ultimate outcome where they were 1 score short in a game where they kind of killed themselves multiple times, fumbles, penalties, drop passes, busted coverages. They kind of beat themselves and yet still just came up 1 touchdown short of winning. I think the guys who were on the team last year probably are the even most motivated, but then somehow these freshmen are coming in and they're just picking up right where these guys are, picking up as well. Yeah. By just having that type of mindset of every week, I got to get better. And that's going to serve them well because the schedule is going to get a lot tougher than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, another guy I wanted to touch on, Malik Muhammad. I don't think he has gotten enough recognition for the season that he's quite had up to this point. Now, yes, I will preface all of about what we are about to say with the last 3 games the Texas Longhorns have played. The passing opponent that they have played against, not great. Quarterback issues. I will say Colorado State might have the best quarterback situation that we've seen all season, considering Michigan is woefully short in the quarterback department. But however, Malik Muhammad has had throughout 3 games, by the way, this is a 3-game stretch, 9 targets targeted against him. He's allowed 3 receptions with 19 yards allowed and 3 pass breakups. One of those pass breakups leading to an interception in that Michigan game. Malik Muhammad is a true sophomore, and I think next season he's going to be ready to be considered a top 10 pick in the NFL.
I think he already is. I mean, if you look at next year's class, he's got to be already pretty much considered to be there. These types of corners just don't come along that often.
Yeah.
He is a complete lockdown corner. He was probably, I would say he was probably the best secondary player for Texas last year for a lot of the season.
I would agree with that.
And
Yeah.
that was as a true freshman. He's another one of those 5-star commits that as a true freshman made a significant impact on a very, very good football team. And now we're just seeing that continue. Anthony Hill, another one of those guys. And you're just seeing this, way that Sark likes to build the program, which is primarily through elite high school recruiting, supplementing with the transfer portal rather than relying on the transfer portal and risking ending up like a Florida State.
Yeah, no, I completely, yeah, that's somewhere you don't want to be. And even in Michigan, not relying on recruiting the top talent and then passing by and not filling in those gaps that you have on your roster that you see with the transfer portal. And that's what the transfer portal should be about. It should be high level recruiting, get your best guys in there from day one, and then use the transfer portal to fill any gaps, much like the NFL does with free agency. One last thing that I wanted to touch on, Jake, Lance Jackson, commit for Texas in that 2025 class I was just talking about, ranked as the number 13 player on the On 300 ranks, is now moved and been promoted to 5-star. You had kind of talked about that you were excited about him even whenever he announced his commitment as a 4-star, and you were thinking he'll be a 5-star before the high school season starts. Well, they waited 3 weeks to do that.
Yeah, my only complaint here is why did it take so long? He should have been a 5-star at the end of last year. Pretty much anyone, any recruiting expert with a brain, and I think we all know who some of those guys are, pretty much all thought he was a 5-star. And this isn't just Texas homers saying that. This is people who just evaluate the talent, as kind of a third party. And pretty much everyone thought he should be a 5-star. And what makes him special is he's going to have the ability. He's already, I think it's 6'3", 6'4", 270, and he looks lean at that weight. He can add weight. They can move him inside. There's talk that he could play some defensive tackle even once he gets more weight on and be kind of one of those guys that can almost hybrid between edge and tackle. He's got a chance to be another special player. And again, the edge, Sark's so good at when he notices a weakness, he attacks it through recruiting and attacks it through the portal. He saw that the edge was weak last year, and he knew it was weak the year before. It got better last year, but he wasn't okay with just being okay at edge last year. He went out and he's made that room probably not elite yet. We need to see more and more sacks come in to be elite, but at least a very good, very above average edge group that's constantly generating pressure and's pretty darn young. Colton Vasek is another guy who's coming on right now on the current team. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Lance Jackson get some run next year as a true freshman and maybe be the next freshman that makes an impact immediately on a really good football team.
Yeah. And Texas has just added to the 5-stars that they've already accumulated in this 2025 class. I asked you earlier, I said, man, could we possibly pass up that A&M class? And just in terms of sheer numbers, this class is already going to be better overall in terms of like on-field production. But in terms of, the number of 5-stars that are recruited. I mean, I know Texas still technically isn't even the number 1 class right now, but they're working their way up to it.
Yeah, when I checked, they hadn't updated the team rankings yet with Jackson as a 5-star, so they may jump up to 4. But the wild thing is they were the number 5 class in the country, which is good for number 4 in the SEC. Now, all those top 5 classes are pretty close. I mean, with Lance Jackson becoming a 5-star, that ties Texas for the most 5-stars with 4. They'll have to get up to, I believe it is 8 to match the A&M class, but there are still a couple 5-stars in the works for Texas, and who knows what could be coming down the pipeline with some last-second flips. You always know Sark's good he's already produced some flips. You always know he's good for some flips late in the cycle from teams that are struggling.
And that's what he's done. And that's another thing that he's done. I want to end the show with this, Jake. And yes, that is Gerald back there. Everybody say hi to Gerald. He will be my co-host here in studio with me. He's going to help me out at least through the Halloween season. But I do want to end off the show with Sark commenting on the atmosphere. You and I talked about the game day atmosphere on Friday's episode and how important it was for fans to be in the stands, being loud, no matter who the opponent is against UTSA. Sark had put a mention in. It was great seeing everyone stay the entire game. That was a blowout. And I know they wanted to see Arch play. I know that probably had something to do with it. But man, to stay all 4 quarters in a 56-7 victory over UTSA and to basically have a sellout crowd and that sellout crowd remain the entire game, that says something.
Yeah, it just shows not only the game day environment in DKR being much better than it was several years ago, but just Texas has been waiting and hungry. The whole fan base has been, when students are there, they all want Texas football to be a top contending program. And when you are losing home games to Baylor and Oklahoma State and TCU's, it's pretty hard to get excited. And obviously, if they were that level of team this year, they'd be looking at getting whipped by, some better schools than what are in the Big 12 in football. But it just goes to show excitement, I would say, is at an all-time high level, even more than last year, because now I think people are starting to realize, okay, this is real. That doesn't mean they're going to go undefeated, folks. If they lose a game, don't go in the comment section and be like, you said they're never going to lose again. They could lose a game this year. They could lose 2 games. This program is still at the point now where I think we can say it's where we want it to be, and it's trending in a direction where we could dream it to be.
You're exactly right. Well, let's go ahead in the show there. That is Tuesday's episode. Jake, we are 17 episodes into this thing now, finishing off this one. This is episode 16. And so want to thank everybody for the support. Like, share, subscribe. All in Horns, your daily fix on all things Texas Longhorns. Same time tomorrow, everybody, for All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson. Welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.